After years of standing at the edge of the most corrosive scandal in modern royal history, hoping proximity to their father would not define them, Beatrice and Eugenie have reportedly drawn a line. A moment no one expected storms into the headlines. From behind closed palace doors, an account has emerged of daughters who once defended the indefensible, finally choosing the survival of their own futures over loyalty to a man the institution has formally erased. Whispers of unanswered calls, cancelled plans, and a relationship now conducted through intermediaries ignite fierce debate, while royal insiders brace for what comes next. Sources hint at a rupture so complete it has left those closest to the family in a state of quiet disbelief. Is this the final collapse of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's last remaining alliance? What exactly have his daughters decided, and why does this moment feel less like family drama and more like a verdict? This is the story of two daughters who loved their father long past the point where loving him was easy, and who now appear to have reached the point where it is no longer possible. Not because they stopped caring, because the cost of remaining visible at his side finally exceeded everything they had worked a decade to build. To understand what is happening now, you have to understand what Beatrice and Eugenie have absorbed since 2019. That November, their father sat down for a BBC interview that was intended to rehabilitate him, and instead became a monument to catastrophic misjudgment. Neither daughter was present for the filming. But they were present for the fallout. In the weeks that followed, patronages evaporated. Military titles were surrendered, and every professional contact their father had cultivated began the quiet process of stepping away. Beatrice and Eugenie watched it happen in real time. And for years, they continued to include him. Photographs at family gatherings, reported visits to Royal Lodge, public silence where public denunciation would have been easier. But here is where things get worse. The Epstein files arrived in late January 2026. Not rumour, not allegation. 3 million pages of documents, photographs and email chains released by the United States Department of Justice. Buried inside those files were records placing Andrew in circumstances that no statement has been able to adequately explain. Thames Valley Police confirmed they were assessing the material. Days later, Andrew was moved from Royal Lodge under cover of darkness. And weeks after that, on the morning of his 66th birthday, officers arrived at Wood Farm Cottage and took him in for questioning. The precise charge under investigation is misconduct in public office, connected to his decade as the United Kingdom's trade envoy and what he may have communicated to Jeffrey Epstein during that time. Andrew has denied all allegations. He was released pending further inquiry. But the arrest itself was a moment that could not be managed, softened, or delayed. A former senior royal questioned by police in a criminal investigation. And his daughters, for the first time in a decade of standing quietly nearby, appear to have stepped back. To understand the full weight of that withdrawal, you have to understand what Beatrice and Eugenie had been attempting to build in parallel with their father's unraveling. Beatrice, now in her mid-30s, has cultivated a professional profile entirely independent of her father's public role. She sits on business advisory boards. She has attended Davos. She has positioned herself carefully at the intersection between royal heritage and modern commerce. Eugenie has done the same. Her work in anti-trafficking advocacy, her platform on sustainability, her connections in New York and London's philanthropic circles. Both daughters have spent years constructing professional identities that could survive whatever happened to Andrew. The question was always how much proximity was sustainable before the damage became structural. The answer, it now appears, is this: an arrest, a police station, a birthday spent in custody. That was the moment the calculation changed. One source, speaking to a British national newspaper on the condition of anonymity, described the situation in terms that were precise and devastating. They are not abandoning him, but they are no longer able to be seen to stand with him. And in their world, those two things are very close to the same thing. The numbers tell their own story. In 2024, Beatrice made 11 documented public appearances in which her father's name was not mentioned, and his presence was not implied. She attended events in her own name, on her own platforms, representing her own interests. In the first quarter of 2026, she has attended none at which Andrew was present or connected. Eugenie's pattern is identical. The attendance record is not emotional testimony, it is institutional record-keeping, and it points in one direction. Palace silence, as ever, is treated as a text in itself. When Buckingham Palace says a matter is private, it is almost always because the private reality cannot survive public exposure. What is private in this case is the shape of a family relationship that has been quietly restructured around the fact that one of its members is now the subject of an active police investigation. What makes the daughter's position so significant is not simply its emotional content, it is its institutional meaning. Beatrice and Eugenie are not estranged cousins. They are the women who lived at Royal Lodge, who were photographed with Epstein associates before the world understood what those associations meant, who appeared, according to one account in the released files, in proximity to Epstein's circle during a period their father has never adequately explained. Their distance now is not simply a family grief, it is a signal to every institution still watching. A signal that even within the immediate household, the calculation has shifted. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor maintains his denials. He was not charged on the day of his arrest. The investigation continues. But the staff at Sandringham have their list of refusals. The titles are gone. The home is gone. The charity his former wife built has shuttered. The public that once gave him the benefit of the doubt has withdrawn it. And now the daughters who called Royal Lodge home, who once described their family as unusual but loving, have reportedly gone quiet. Every loss in this story has followed the same pattern. First the distance, then the departure. First the calls becoming less frequent, then the intermediaries. First, the private re-evaluation, then the public record of absence. The last time Andrew could claim that even those who knew him best still stood beside him was 2025. That claim no longer appears available to him. So when you look at the unanswered calls, the professional distance, the cancelled appearances, the mediated contact, and the two women who spent a decade trying to love someone the institution had already decided to let go, do you see daughters who finally ran out of options? Or do you see something that should have happened years earlier, long before the arrest, long before the files, long before the damage reached into their own lives and demanded a choice? The investigation continues, the palace remains silent, and Beatrice and Eugenie, for the first time in a decade of standing quietly at the edge of the storm, appear to have finally stepped inside.